We are closely watching how the White House is responding to the news that President Trump and the First Lady have tested positive for the coronavirus, both of them. Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett is following the latest developments in this unfolding story. Major, good morning to you again. Have you heard anything about possible exposure for Vice President Mike Pence?
Well, the vice president was in proximity to President Trump this week, so that is something that has to be explained by the White House. That could also have implications for the vice presidential debate on October 7th, because if the vice president was exposed, if he tests positive, well, that brings that into question as well. We don't know. This goes back to my earlier point at the top of the broadcast. This is a time, whether this White House is prepared for it or not, for maximum transparency. Not only do our friends want to know, our enemies want to know, markets want to know, everyone in the world wants to know what happened, why, how well the president is, what therapies, if any, he is taking, and how he's doing, not just day to day, but morning, noon, and night.
Major, from what you know, what exactly were the protocols in the White House for dealing with the coronavirus?
Anthony, they weren't protocols. They were preferences. And the preference was not to social distance, not to wear masks. And that's the problem. That is the quite visible problem for this White House right now. Protocols are real, protocols are enforced, and protocols are repeated. And at this White House, there was a very brief period where the protocols of mask wearing were more or less adhered to, and that lasted about a week. And that was several weeks ago. And this White House has been, I think Paula Reed used an appropriate word, not an editorial word, an accurate word, cavalier about these protocols, doing things in the way the president preferred and aides around him preferred. You can take video for days and days and weeks of White House events where there simply are no masks, or if they're worn infrequently. And those kinds of things send not only an internal message to West Wing staff, but they send a message to the country.
Yeah.
And the president has mocked former Vice President Joe Biden and his unwillingness to have rallies and his willingness to wear a mask in all encounters. Well, that mockery is now being viewed quite clearly in a different context.
Yeah, I was going to pick up on that's exactly what I was thinking, Major, because this has got to be President Trump's worst nightmare, one of them anyway, because he has certainly downplayed this for weeks and for months and doesn't seem to have been taking it as seriously as the scientists seem to think that you should. What do you think will be his likely response? Normally, he seems to double down on things. What do you think will be his likely response?
Well, that's a kind of an area of speculation I don't like to get into, but my sense of the president, having covered him for many, many years now, is that he will want, as he always wants to do, project two things, optimism and strength. And it is quite possible, as Dr. David Agus said, by percentages, he could have a mild case and get through this rather rapidly. But that's not the key metric. The key metric is, how did this happen? What is the contact tracing? What does that look like to the American public? How do you reassure rattled investors? How do you reassure allies? How do you tell others who wish us ill, don't play with this because I'm fine, the presidency is intact, and I'll get better? All those things are on the table right now. The White House has to wrap its arms around every single one of those items on the to-do list, and earlier rather than later.
Well, Major, on that last point, a lot of Americans are going to be waking up this morning and they're going to have one question in their mind: can the president continue to do his job? Based on how this president works and what you know of the work of the presidency in general, how likely is it that he'll be able to carry out his duties in quarantine?
Fully likely, as long as he doesn't get seriously ill. If he gets seriously ill, then the 25th Amendment rather, comes into play. Ratified in 1967, that's a temporary transfer of power to the vice president if for any reason, medical or otherwise, you're incapacitated. We're not there yet. We're not close to that. But it's a question on the minds of every American citizen. And the White House has to explain daily how the president's doing and how close, if at all close, it's getting to that point.
Yeah, the key word again, as you said at the top of this broadcast, and again just recently, transparency. It's so important to know exactly what is happening in the White House at all times when it comes to this illness, this virus.
In this context, in the midst of this campaign, with this virus, it has never been more important.
There's so many ramifications here. Major, thank you. Thank you very much.